Imagine standing before a temple so massive that it seems impossible. Not because of its size, not because of its beauty, but because of how it was created. This isn't a temple built from thousands of stone blocks. No stones were transported here. No giant walls were assembled. No pieces were stacked together. Instead, everything you see was carved from a single mountain. Every pillar, every staircase, every sculpture, every hall, everything was once part of one enormous rock. And somehow, more than 1,200 years ago, ancient craftsmen transformed that mountain into one of the greatest architectural wonders ever created. Even today, visitors who see it for the first time often ask the same question. How? How did people living over 1,000 years ago accomplish something that appears impossible even by modern standards? How do they plan it? How do they carve it? And how did they avoid making a single catastrophic mistake? Because unlike ordinary buildings, there was no second chance. Every strike of a hammer permanently removed stone. One major error could have ruined years of work. Yet somehow they succeeded. Welcome to Kailasa Temple, one of the greatest mysteries of ancient engineering. Located in the state of Maharashtra, India, Kailasa Temple stands within the famous Ellora caves, a remarkable complex of rock-cut monuments carved into the Sharanandri Hills. For centuries, artisans, pilgrims, historians, and travelers have stood in awe of this place. But among all the caves and monuments of Ellora, one structure dominates them all: Kailasa Temple. At first glance, it looks like a traditional temple complex. There are towering gateways, massive courtyards, beautifully carved pillars, stone bridges, shrines, and countless sculptures covering almost every surface. But then visitors discover the truth. This entire complex was carved from a single piece of basalt rock, not built upward, carved downward. Imagine a sculptor looking at a giant block of stone and removing everything that doesn't belong. Now imagine doing that on the scale of an entire temple. That is the challenge the builders faced. Most historians believe the temple was commissioned during the 8th century by King Krishna I of the Rashtrakuta dynasty. At the time, the Rashtrakutas ruled a powerful empire across large parts of India. They were known for supporting art, architecture, literature, and religion. But even among all their achievements, Kailasa Temple stands apart. Nothing else they created comes close to its scale and ambition. The temple was designed as a representation of Mount Kailash, the sacred mountain believed in Hindu tradition to be the home of Lord Shiva. For devotees, it was not simply a place of worship. It was a symbolic recreation of a divine world. But creating that vision required an extraordinary level of planning. Because before a single sculpture could be carved, before a single pillar could be shaped, before a single prayer could be offered, the builders first had to solve a problem that would challenge even modern engineers. How do you carve an entire temple out of a mountain without destroying it? And the answer to that question begins with one of the most astonishing construction methods ever attempted in human history: the engineering challenge hidden inside the mountain. To understand why Kailasa Temple is considered one of the greatest engineering achievements in history, we need to look beyond what we see. Because the most remarkable part of this monument is not the temple itself. It's the planning behind it. Archaeologists believe the builders began at the top of the rock formation and worked downward. That meant the final vision of the temple had to exist long before most of the structure could be seen. Imagine standing on a rocky hill and trying to visualize courtyards, pillars, staircases, shrines, and sculptures hidden inside solid stone. Then imagine removing thousands of tons of rock without damaging the future monument. The builders were working with basalt, a hard volcanic rock found throughout this region. Basalt is strong enough to survive for centuries, but shaping it requires patience, skill, and precision. Even today, when engineers study Kailasa Temple, they see evidence of careful planning rather than simple excavation. The temple was not assembled. It was revealed, and every section of the complex reflects decisions made long before the first sculpture appeared. But Kailasa Temple was never meant to be admired only as an engineering achievement. Its deeper purpose was spiritual, and that story begins with one of the most sacred mountains in Hindu tradition. The sacred story behind Kailasa Temple. The temple takes its name from Mount Kailash, the sacred mountain believed in Hindu tradition to be the abode of Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. For millions of devotees, Mount Kailash represents far more than a geographical location. It symbolizes the meeting point between the earthly world and the divine. The creators of Kailasa Temple sought to bring that sacred idea into stone. Rather than simply constructing a place of worship, they created a symbolic representation of Shiva's heavenly dwelling. This connection appears throughout the monument, the sculptures, the shrines, the layout, even the spiritual themes carved into the walls. One of the most famous stories represented here is the story of Ravana and Mount Kailash. According to Hindu tradition, Ravana, the powerful king of Lanka, once attempted to lift Mount Kailash to demonstrate his strength. As the mountain trembled, Lord Shiva calmly pressed it down with his toe. The enormous weight trapped Ravana beneath the mountain. Realizing his mistake, Ravana prayed to Shiva with deep devotion. Moved by his sincerity, Shiva eventually forgave him and granted him blessings. The story is often interpreted as a lesson about humility, devotion, and the limits of pride. And centuries later, that moment remains immortalized in stone within Kailasa Temple itself. The story is carved into stone. As visitors move through the complex, they quickly realize that Kailasa Temple is more than architecture. It is also a vast gallery of storytelling. The walls are covered with scenes drawn from Hindu epics, such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These carvings serve an important purpose. In a world where knowledge was often shared through oral tradition, sculpture became a powerful way to communicate stories and values. One of the first features many visitors notice is the presence of massive stone elephants near the base of the temple. At first glance, they appear to support the monument itself. Whether symbolic or decorative, they create the impression that the temple is resting upon living strength. Another feature visitors remember is the Nandi Mandapa. Located directly in front of the main shrine, it houses Nandi, the sacred bull and devoted companion of Lord Shiva. What makes it remarkable is that it was carved from the same rock formation as the rest of the temple. No separate construction, no assembled pieces, just one continuous mass of stone shaped into a sacred landscape. Look closely throughout the complex, and you'll find depictions of Shiva in different forms. Some portray him as a meditating ascetic. Others show him as Natraja, the cosmic dancer whose movements symbolize creation and destruction within the universe. Each sculpture combines artistic beauty with deeper philosophical meaning. The temple does not simply display stories. It invites visitors to explore them, the clues left behind by the builders. More than 12 centuries later, Kailasa Temple continues to function as an archaeological treasure. Researchers study details that many visitors never notice. In some areas, tool marks remain visible on the stone surface. These marks provide valuable evidence about how craftsmen shaped the rock. Certain unfinished sections are equally important. They offer rare glimpses into the construction process itself. Instead of seeing only the completed masterpiece, archaeologists can observe stages of work frozen in time. Scholars also examine differences in carving styles across the complex. These variations may suggest the involvement of different groups of artisans working under a shared vision. Every pillar, every sculpture, every carved surface contains information waiting to be interpreted. The temple is not only a monument, it is a historical record preserved in stone. Myth versus science. Because Kailasa Temple is so extraordinary, many myths and theories have emerged around its construction. Some claim it could not have been built using the tools available at the time. Others suggest unknown technologies were responsible. But archaeological evidence points toward a different explanation. The monument reflects generations of accumulated knowledge in stone carving, architecture, geometry, and planning. Rather than appearing suddenly, Kailasa Temple represents the peak of a long tradition of rock-cut architecture in India. The more researchers study the site, the more they discover evidence of human skill and organization. Sometimes the real story is more impressive than speculation, because what ancient craftsmen achieved here was extraordinary even without modern technology. Why Kailasa Temple remains unforgettable. Almost everyone who visits Kailasa Temple remembers the same moment. The moment they stop seeing a temple and start seeing the mountain that once surrounded it. Suddenly the pillars look different. The sculptures look different. The courtyards look different. Everything around them was once part of a single rock formation. And that realization changes the experience completely. Kailasa Temple is not merely a place of worship. It is a meeting point of engineering, art, mythology, devotion, and human creativity. More than 1,200 years after its creation, it continues to inspire wonder in everyone who stands before it. Not because it defies science, not because it requires supernatural explanations, but because it demonstrates what human beings can achieve when vision, skill, faith, and determination come together. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of Kailasa Temple, a mountain transformed into a masterpiece that still speaks to the world today.